So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today I have a dear friend of mine, S. Lee Wright, who I've known for, very long time. I won't say how long. But Lee is one of the first people I have ever met that studied and worked in sustainability. She runs her own design firm called S. Lee Wright Interior Designs. And Lee, you were the first person I knew who ever got certified in LEED. Back when I called it LEED, I didn't even know what to call it. You were doing sustainable design from day one. I didn't even know what sustainability meant. That's how far back we're going. So please just tell us what you're doing, how you're doing it, everything, please.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me on this platform, because I so love what you're doing. So, it's nice to not be floating out in the world completely alone. As you said, when I started my company in 2002, Holistic Interior Designs, people needed an explanation of what, looking at your project with a sustainability look was not something that people were really understanding, and it took a lot of getting into it. So I'm so happy that you are in that world, and the world has found sustainability to a certain extent has become kind of sexy, but I'm okay with that because that gives us a whole bunch of market traction and, really raises the awareness in a general way for what living sustainably does. And so obviously I'm a trained interior architect, right?
Yes.
And when you met me, I had just done a massive transformation and I had quit the corporate world, right? Remember? And started my own company. And I started my own company because I wanted to approach interior design differently. I wanted to bring great design in a sustainable way to everybody. It didn't need to be just for the high-end luxury people. But at that point, I also was very much aware that in the interior design and construction and architectural industries, there's a lot of junk thrown away. There's more... more stuff. Statistically, it's terrifying how many, thousands and thousands of tons of waste is thrown away. And so my approach just was like, we can't be unaware of that as an interior designer. But boy, was I out in no man's land when I started, right?
Well, people just throw it away. Let's renovate, throw it all away. And it's like, yeah.
Oh my God, kills me. Yeah. So I've been running my company for nearly 20 years, which is almost terrifying to me. Just dated myself there. And so 20 years ago, we were completely groundbreaking with the way that was looking at it. And all I really wanted to do was raise the awareness of what it could possibly mean if we were going to reuse something instead of throwing it away. Woohoo! I know the idea of reusing something instead of throwing stuff away. And my holistic approach was also about looking at people's whole lives, the whole thing, not just thinking about how to make their space pretty. And my tagline,
you do that.
Space.
That's right. Everything you've ever posted, you look at how they live their life, every room, every person in the household, and how they interact. That's what I remember that.
Yeah. And so it was like this whole life exploration about looking at how you live your life, how you want to live your life, and how your space and the design can influence you to be a better person or not, right? It can also do a lot of things to create bad habits. And so I really look at when we're transforming people's spaces, it's also about transforming who they are. And that's a lot about what you're doing about raising the awareness. Now, no shame, no blame. I don't make people feel bad. Yeah. I educate them about what their options are. 20 years ago, doing green materials was near to impossible. Low VOC and no VOC paint was like new to the market.
Yeah.
So difficult and more expensive. And so that was always the excuse. It's not more expensive now. And if you look at things from a long-term cradle to grave period of things, like changing LEED light bulbs now are more expensive to put in, but they save you energy long-term. So that level in 20 years has failed. out, right? So great. So now I treat my clients the exact same way I did before, but now there's more awareness. There's a lot more engagement of conversations about how they want to live their life, and making eco choices to a certain extent aren't really an option for me. In the obvious part of building their homes from sustainability, like I'm doing a renovation in New York right now, and everything's going to be done with sustainable, recycled quartz countertops, no VOC paints. We're reusing all the floors, even in the areas that we have to demo. We're taking floors from places that we can reuse it in other places. Talked him out of a big air conditioning system, and we're doing much more small spaces with fans and creating circulation. But the kind of exciting thing is also talking to them about their lifestyle approach, talking about the idea of composting in a city, and talking about to build that into the way that your kitchen is designed, so you can think about how you're doing things differently. Just because you live in a city doesn't mean that you can't be eco and green. And so it's really exciting because we talk not just about the design, because obviously the design and construction has to be done in a sustainable way. And there's a whole bunch of things that I actually do to help them and educate them to make those choices during that. But what I really love is I really love thinking about how afterwards they're going to be more sustainably minded. They're going to think about this, because I really want sustainability to be the norm, going forward. So if they transform their space with me, I can help transform the way they live later on, which to me is the real juicy, fun magic of what I do, and how I help my clients kind of open their eyes and become more aware of how they interact with their spaces in a way that isn't just about being surface deep. I moved to Spain 6 years
ago. We forgot to say you moved to Spain. You now live in a different country.
Yeah. And I did that because my environment in New York City was becoming unsustainable for me as a person. And I'd been there for nearly 20 years the last time I was living in that city. And it's not that I don't have still a love affair with New York, but it wasn't sustainable for me because there's this addiction to being busy and comparing themselves to everybody else, still really hung up on being pretty. And I was like,
and having
do it.
When you and I both lived in New York, like we shopped a lot, not gonna lie, did a lot of shopping, and it was all about having more stuff. And when you pull yourself out of that, and that's part of being sustainable as well, is knowing how much is enough. Absolutely. Knowing that what you need versus what you want, and being okay with that. And you and I were talking earlier, just pulling yourself out of that mindset is actually very liberating.
So liberating, so liberating. Got rid of my big apartment, my office, all my stuff, and transformed my life to a very small Spanish apartment and live a completely different lifestyle. So I'm very much walking the walk, which is really fantastic. I don't ever preach to people and tell them how to do things. I just invite them to have different conversations with themselves and their family about how they would like to live. And I can share my own personal experiences on how liberating it is. But it's difficult when you're in an environment that's constantly seducing you to want more.
Yeah.
Right? We've got the biggest brains in the world trying to sell us that we're going to be happier if we've got that new thing. And I really talk about how spaces need to be functional first. And so many spaces I go into are dysfunctional, and they set up bad habits, and we need to kind of break that norm. And New York, like a lot of places in the modern world, busy, busy, busy. We're running around, I love being.
If you're not busy, then you're not being productive. If you're not being productive, then you're not contributing to society. And it's this vicious circle, and we all got wrapped up in it. And best part is just when you take a step back, you're like, I'm running in a circle. I'm not actually accomplishing anything. I'm looking like I'm accomplishing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge task person, and I was this totally ambitious person, and I had, transferred my life when I gave up my corporate career. It was the first time I realized I wasn't living a holistic life. My life was work, 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 work.
Yeah.
But then I started my company in New York, and I woke up 15 years later, and what was it?
Work, 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 work.
Work, work, work. Even if I loved what I was doing, even if I was helping people design sustainable spaces. So I recognized that my environment had won again, and I needed to do something to change my environment because I can be addicted to busy just like the rest of us.
Oh, yeah.
And wanting to try to find ways to help people to break that addiction to busyness, and recognizing that your home needs to be a refuge for you from that busyness, and a space that really lowers your nervous system so you can think
Yeah.
more clearly, get rid of the chaos so you can slow down and make bigger decisions on a kind of 10,000-foot view, whereas most of the time you're just reacting and on autopilot. We really want to break that kind of way of living.
The chaos
Last week,
factor. Yeah.
right? For a
No,
lot of us last year, we were forced into a stop moment, right?
that was actually, I mean, I know it's very hard on people. We're actually doing a couple episodes on mental health coming up. But I think it was important for people to take a step back and get out of that office environment and realize what's important to me, what's important to my lifestyle, what's important for my family. Because a lot of us, I mean, I was the biggest, I worked on my honeymoon. I've worked every holiday ever. I know I'm stupid, but I worked every holiday I ever had because I'm like, I have to respond. I have to prove that I'm worthy. Didn't get me anywhere. It did absolutely nothing for me other than run me into the ground. And I had a complete flailing burnout. And it wasn't until I pulled myself out that I realized I'm okay. I'm doing pretty well actually. And one of the things,
having that mental empty space, right? You find yourself coming up with better ideas, being more productive. I think I've moved to Spain, and I have completely transformed my 12, 14-hour days, 6 days a week, to a life that is in a lifestyle that's a lot more sustainable, a lot more me focused, and time for having a social life. Oh my God,
how dare you?
and having a whole life, and recognizing that with that, I've written 3 books. I blog, I do workshops on sustainability, continuing educations on sustainable bathroom designs, on sustainable living.
You did excursions as well.
I do.
Yeah.
Pandemic put a little bit of a curve on that, but I was doing and plan on doing in the future, where you do a retreat at a sustainable retreat center. My last one was in Morocco, and the one that got canceled because of the pandemic was going to be in Marbella, Spain. And it was all about learning how to Feng Shui your life, because that's another, I studied Feng Shui at the same time I was studying lead, if you can believe that. So an ancient practice that Feng Shui for me is really, it always took the environment into consideration. It never does anything that is out of balance with nature. The 5 elements, which is what nature is made up of, is always looking for homeostasis and balance. And in Feng Shui, that's an essential concept. Completely something that is not taught in architectural schools and interior design schools about, they understand flow and circulation. But if you walk around and you look at most of the architectural buildings today that are being built, they are not being built sustainably, and they're definitely not using the concept of Feng Shui, what actually makes our nervous system calm instead of being reactive. Think about New York City's architecture, right? A little bit kind of high. A lot of fire energy, a lot of metal energy, a lot of aggressive, a lot of running, a lot of fear. And you really want to
bring up fear. I'm glad you brought up fear. That is, corporate world, there is a lot of fear mongering that goes around. And that the building environment, when you walk into that office, you do get a little bit of anxiety. You get that buildup of, oh my God, I have to prove myself every single minute of every single day. And, people would actually come to me when I was in the corporate world, and you do this great, big, huge deal. And the next day it's like, yeah, but what'd you do for me today? Like,
totally. It's why I gave up the corporate world, because when I was doing corporate design, in the 90s. I was part of a team that was about wellness in the office space. And we were talking about how to create more productivity and more healthy work environments, allowing different ways of working, hoteling where people could actually work from home and work. I know that's all normal now, but it wasn't normal then.
No.
It was an uphill battle because back then they didn't really care about the true wellness of the people because they couldn't actually understand that happy people are more productive, right? They just,
oh no, when
you know,
when you're on, when
like
someone's full of anxiety, yeah, if you have anxiety and anger and just stress, most people, I don't know anyone that thrives in that. Most people will actually kind of shell up and protect themselves and be very quiet and remove themselves.
and more than that, your creativity gets stunted.
Yeah.
You don't have creativity, you don't have flow. One, when you're super, super busy. And two, when you're constantly stressed and worried about the safety. Because no matter what, and this is a great Feng Shui thing, is your subconscious will always be assessing your environment, whether you know it or not. Most of us are cerebral and caught in our head and not paying attention at all to our bodies. But our bodies are still reacting. They're still there. They're still doing things. So your nervous system is going to be agitated if your brain is not connecting to that. It doesn't matter. Your nervous system is still reacting to the fact that your space isn't safe. You know, if you're in one of those cubicles where people can walk behind you all the time and people kind of
they
always
pop their heads over.
Yeah, that's not productive. And that's why there was such a huge amount of turnover rate. Well, the corporate world is starting to get their head around it. And they've got, you know, not only is Lead's really cool. And I really did it because it was the only naming in town, the only game in town 20 years ago on how I could actually express myself as a sustainability expert. But now they have things like Well, where they talk about how people feel in a space, and they have meditation rooms, and they actually have plants in spaces, which is super great because they're starting to recognize the connection between the mind and the body is super essential. And your space impacts the way you feel. And the way you feel impacts the way that you operate. Your productivity is deeply impacted by your space. It's crazy.
It is nuts. And I wanted to finish this out with how, so you work around the world. You are based in Spain, but you can work anywhere. You do, you know, thank God we have all this remote activity now, but you do travel quite a bit. Tell people how they can find you, what your specialties are, you know.
Cool. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, 6 years ago, I disappeared from New York physically and live in my little apartment in Spain in San Sebastian. But I still run my company in New York because of this wonderful thing called technology that allows us to figure out how to do this like remotely. So I am an online consultant, interior design consultant, and I have clients in New York and the United States, in Spain and in the UK. Like currently I'm now running projects in all three places. Haven't quite learned Spanish, so most of my clients are still English speaking, but I am working on that. And so, yeah, Holistic Interior Designs is the name of my company, and my approach is about helping people create spaces that are more than just pretty. And I blog a lot about how to sustainability starter steps, because another thing is I just am trying to educate people to think about their space in a different way, and what little things you can do today have a ripple effect. So changeyourspace.info is my blog, and I really love to interact with people, and it's where you can also find my workshops and my retreats when I'm doing them. And I'm creating online classes to help people figure out how to feng shui their office, and those kinds of things to help people, because the world of DIY is quite big, and I'm here to tell people that you can do a lot of it. So I'm much more of a mentor and a coach these days. Though I do the projects. Obviously, I'm renovating a big loft right now in New York, but I feel a lot more like I'm this advocate for eco living, and I'm changing the way people think about the way that their spaces are. And that to me is kind of the juicy, fun stuff of what I do. Being a designer for 30 some odd years, it's, the design I can do. that's my superpower. I've got it. But my second superpower is about this kind of holistic life approach and sustainability being no longer an option. It has to be the norm.
Yes.
But I look at it, Wendy, I love your no shame, no blame, every little bit helps. I love that because that's what I am. I'm not blaming my people for still using paper towels. I love that.
Did you
we're not perfect, but if we're making small steps now to actually change it, that impacts everybody around us. In Spain, pre-pandemic, I did a lot of party hosting because we do, and I ended up buying a whole bunch of actual glasses because it really killed me here. People would have a party with plastic glasses and then throw them away. And so the ripple effect is in me doing that, all my circle of people now are aware and are starting to do it themselves. So
it tastes better out of a glass. Plastic makes that, you just have that tinge. There is an aftertaste, especially if you have wine in a plastic glass. It's kind of disgusting.
Oh, seriously. Yeah. So,
well, thank you so much. This has been
fabulous. This has been so much fun. It's been so great reconnecting with you, and I love that this whole platform of what you're doing, we're spreading awareness of the small steps everybody can make in their spaces, because if you are changing here and how you are at home, you're going to start connecting that there's no way if you have a sustainable home that you're not going to want to be sustainable in your entire life. To me, they're totally
small changes. It's just the small lifestyle changes that start to have a ripple effect and then a snowball effect, and no shaming, no blaming. Every little bit helps. It's little. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and I will put all of your info in the write-up. And thank you again. This has been extremely educational, and what you're doing is wonderful. And you were literally the first person I met who was doing sustainable design. I had no clue what that was.
Oh, no. Well, thank you for picking up the mantle and actually doing it on a different level and having a different way of meeting people and helping do the same thing. We're all about the same thing. I just happen to be an interior designer and help you do it in your home. So if you're looking for some help in that way, I am your person.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.